Then shall we start?
Check with Arshida.
Harshada?
Yes, sir, we can start.
Yeah, sure,
So,
please.
A very good morning to everybody present here. It is with great pleasure and zeal I welcome you all to this webinar on animal-assisted therapy. First and foremost, I'd like to thank our respected Managing Trustee, Mr. L. Gopalakrishnan, sir, our respected Secretary, Dr. T. Kannayan, sir, and our respected Principal, Dr. D. Brinda, for their invaluable support. I welcome the management in their absentia. I would like to thank and welcome the resource person for today, Dr. Rex. Thank you, sir, for taking time off your busy schedule to be here to address us. We eagerly look forward to what you have to offer to us today. I once again take this moment to extend a hearty welcome to all the student participants and faculty, and we wish this session provides a fantastic learning experience. At the juncture, I would also like to take this opportunity to welcome and introduce our resource person for the day. Dr. Rex Joseph holds a PhD in applied psychology and is currently working as a wellness research lead at Teleperformance. He has over 4 years of experience working as an assistant professor in psychology in various prestigious institutions in India. He's the founder of the Dog Side, which is a venture providing animal-assisted interventions run solely by psychologists. Once again, we welcome you, sir. Thank you for accepting to be here, and the session is all yours.
Thank you, Harshita. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Yes, you can hear. All right. So thanks for that wonderful introduction. And I thank the organizers for providing this opportunity for creating more awareness on animal assisted therapy. So just like she said, I've completed my PhD in applied psychology. We started with the Dog Side in the year 2020. We registered in 2021. we've started in 2020, but of course, due to the pandemic and such issues, we weren't able to do a lot of contact sessions at that point. But fast forward to now, we've got one therapy dog who is permanently placed in an autism residential center in Vellore. And yeah, and of course, I do sessions like this online. So, without further ado, I think I'll get into it because we have about an hour, and I'll also give you time for some question answers at the end. I'd like to start with the basics, of course. Now, everyone has heard. I'm sure most of you would have heard of animal-assisted therapy. You would have seen videos of animal-assisted therapy, etc. Now, before I start with animal-assisted therapy, I'll talk about three different interventions. Right? Animal-assisted therapy is only one of the interventions which comes under the umbrella of AAI, or animal-assisted interventions. The others are animal-assisted education and animal-assisted activities. Why I'm starting with this is because a lot of you might have seen a lot of places advertising animal-assisted therapy, pet therapy, etc. But in all the research that we've done at the dog side, like I said, the dog side team is composed entirely of psychologists. And all the research that we've done, we've also identified that all the places, or most of the places, which advertise animal-assisted therapy are actually providing something called animal-assisted activities. Now, animal-assisted therapy is not a regulated profession in India. So, of course, anyone can call it anything. But there's a huge difference between animal-assisted therapy and animal-assisted activity. So back to our topic. Let me start with what animal-assisted therapy is. Right? Animal-assisted therapy is an alternative or a complementary form of therapy in which an animal is used to make a person feel better. Now, the person can be anyone ranging from a child all the way to somebody who is in the 60s, 70s, 80s, etc. But one thing that we need to keep in mind, I'll get into the details of this later, but animal-assisted therapy, when you're calling it animal-assisted therapy, it's not just the therapy animals, right? So this is the biggest problem I see. Most places which advertise animal-assisted therapy in India, of course, they've got therapy dogs, they've got trained therapy dogs, but they're not providing animal-assisted therapy. What they're doing is something called animal-assisted activity, where you can basically go spend time with the dogs, maybe spend 45 minutes, an hour, and you feel better. That is definitely therapeutic, no doubt about it, but that's not animal assisted therapy, right? That's animal assisted activity. It's one of the three interventions that come under the umbrella of animal assisted intervention. So before going into detail about animal assisted therapy, let me also walk you through the other two, which is animal assisted education and animal assisted activities. Now, animal assisted therapy, like I said, of course, there's an animal, there's a therapy animal involved, but there's also an actual therapist in it, like a physical, a mental, a social. It can be a doctor, a nurse, it can be a psychologist, it can be a psychiatrist, it can be a nurse, a social worker, anyone. But there is a therapist always involved when you're talking about animal assisted therapy. Now, animal assisted education is mostly used with children where children who have difficulty studying or reading or talking in general because of their fear of judgment, etc. Animal assisted education is when we use uh, certified therapy animals with children who will sit with them and help them learn, help them read, help them speak, etc. So a child can basically read a book to a therapy animal without the fear of being judged. And of course, most of you, if you interact with any pet for that matter, be it a dog, a cat, whatever you're comfortable with, you will see that there's no judgment from their side, right? So animal assisted education is basically using the judgment free environment that animals create to help children learn better. And the last one is animal assisted activities. This is that's what is most commonly found in most parts of India, where you have a therapy dog, but there's no actual therapy process going. It is therapeutic, no doubt. It's definitely therapeutic, but there's no animal assisted therapy happening. It's just, you know, people interacting with therapy animals to feel better. And to be honest, you would feel better even when you interact with a regular pet. But of course, therapy animals are trained in such a way that they don't disturb you. Like sometimes people ask me what's the difference between a therapy dog and a regular pet dog. A therapy dog would never come and jump on. You know? I mean, they would be with you, they would spend time with you, but it's on your terms. They wouldn't jump on you unless you really want them to jump on you. If you're taking them for a walk on the leash, they will never pull and run. They'll always walk with you. You can walk with them even without the leash, etc. They are trained so that they never overwhelm the person that they're working with. So these are the basic three interventions that come under animal assisted interventions. Now, uh, let's get into the specifics of animal assisted therapy. Right? I'm assuming most of you guys are psychology students or you have some idea of how psychology and the therapy process works. So, when you, as a psychologist, I'm going to be talking about AAT from a psychologist point of view because that's what we've done. So, when you're talking about any kind of a therapy process, like counseling, clinical, etc., any therapeutic process with a client has a goal, right? As soon as you meet your client, you have the first couple of sessions with your client, you have a goal. You set a goal with your client. Okay, this we will try to accomplish this in this many sessions. This session we'll do this. If even if you don't probably write it down and share it with your client right at the beginning, you have some kind of a goal. AAT is no different. Okay. AAT is no different in that it is a goal directed intervention. There is a goal when it comes to animal assisted therapy. And of course, the goal differs from case to case. For example, if you're working with a special needs student, it's different. If you're working with an adult for counseling, it's different. But it might be different for different people. But like I said earlier, AAT is a goal directed. You will not start an AAT session saying that, okay, the goal is just to make the person feel better. You have a very specific goal when it comes to it. And the animal, the therapy animal is incorporated as an integral part of the treatment process. Right? It's not that the animal is going to provide the therapy for you. Of course, the animal has a huge role to play when it comes to the intervention process or the therapeutic process, but it's an integral part of the process, right? So for animal assisted therapy to be delivered or conducted, you not only need a therapy animal, you also need a professional health or human service provider. I'm talking about certified physical or mental health providers. Like I said earlier, it can be a doctor, it can be a nurse, it can be a psychiatrist, it can be a psychologist, it can be a social worker, but somebody who is licensed to provide some kind of a physical or mental health care service, right? So AAT is delivered with a combination of a therapist, an actual therapist, and a therapy animal. I mostly, not mostly, I always use dogs because the entire concept of the dog side was built on using dogs as therapy animals, but there are places which use other animals as well. We've seen people use cats. There are some places where they use hamsters, white mice, etc. Because it also depends on your clients. It also depends on what they're comfortable with. For example, a client wants to try animal assisted therapy. You cannot impose therapy dogs on. You cannot say that you're going to be working with dogs because if they're not comfortable with dogs, because it also depends on your client. It also depends. Are you guys hearing some kind of echo? Okay, I'm hoping not. I can sometimes hear myself again. So, like I was saying, It depends on the client, depends on the therapist as well, what kind of animal is being used. But it's a combination of a human therapist and a therapy animal. And of course, when you're talking about any kind of therapy animal, the therapy animal will also have a handler, right? Now, it's not always the case that the person who's providing the therapy, the counselor or the doctor, etc., is the handler of the animal. So oftentimes, what happens is there is a therapist, there is a therapy animal, and there is a handler who works with the therapy animal, right? So that's what you have to keep in mind. And another thing is, just like any other kind of a therapeutic session, animal assisted therapy is documented. So after each session, the person who is working with you on the therapy will document the session, not meaning that they will do verbatim of what happened in the session, but they will see what kind of progress happened, how much the therapy animal is able to assist in the process. Because every person who is undergoing animal assisted therapy will have some kind of an individualized treatment plan, right? Just like you have regular therapy sessions. It's not the same for everyone. You will have individualized treatment plans in place. And just like your regular counseling sessions or other therapy sessions, animal assisted therapy sessions also generally have a fixed length. We would never, if you're doing a one-on-one session with a person or a child, we would never do a session for, say, more than 15 minutes to 1 hour at a time, because the dogs, in our case, dogs also need to take rest. They, after that much amount of time, they get overwhelmed, so they get a break. So that is the gist of it. It is when you combine a therapist, a therapy animal, and together they work to make the person feel better. Now, I'll give you a couple of examples of what we've done at the dog center. So, when we started the dog center in 2020, like I said, we registered in 21. We had the opportunity to work with a couple of special schools for a short while. It couldn't go on for long because of COVID and no contact classes, etc. Children were not coming into the centers. Mostly everything was online. And animal assisted therapy, I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't work online, but it mostly works in person. But we still did a few sessions, a few days of sessions at a couple of special schools in Bangalore. So what we did was basically, first we identified children who would be okay in working with animal assisted therapy. Of course, that is a very big, very important part of it, because, for example, you're planning to work with a child on animal assisted therapy, but the child is not comfortable or the child is scared of dogs. We've had incidents where children are scared of dogs. But it's not because the dog has done anything. It could be because of past trauma, or maybe the parents are afraid of dogs. Could be a different number of reasons. So what we did was, first we identified children who are comfortable with dogs to work with them. And there were some children who were not comfortable with dogs, but the parents wanted them to try animal assisted therapy, or more importantly, they wanted the children to be comfortable around dogs, because when they saw the kind of effect that the dogs had on the other children, they were like, okay, if we can get a dog home, get the dog trained, probably better. So what we do is, once we identify the children who are going to be a part of the animal assisted therapy program, we first do, of course, an introduction to the dogs, etc. And then we incorporate the dogs into existing therapy sessions that are there. Of course, the therapy session will change a little bit. One example that I can give you is, we did a lot of sessions with speech therapists, right? These are people who basically help special needs children to, improve their language communication, etc. So what we did was basically used the animal, used our therapy dogs, to create that environment where the child is not afraid of judgment, especially children, or even other children for that matter, when they have to communicate, and they have to read something, and they have to talk to another person. Some children might always be scared whether they'll be judged by the other person, whether their pronunciation is right, whether what they're saying is right, whether the words are correct, etc. right? So we when we worked with the speech therapist, what we did was we asked them to uh, encourage the children to communicate with the dogs, right? They speak to the dogs. And that made a lot of difference because children who were afraid to speak earlier because they were afraid of being judged, within a span of a couple of sessions, became much more confident in communicating because they weren't afraid anymore that someone would come and judge them. Someone would be, they would play with the dogs for some time, then do their speech therapy, and then again take a small break. But that's how we work with special needs. Of course, when we work with special needs children, we always have somebody who is certified by RCI to work with special needs children. You always need to make sure of, you always need to make sure that you're working with licensed professionals. I personally used to use animal assisted therapy in the counseling sessions that I had. So when we were in Bangalore, I used to conduct counseling sessions at home, part of the dog side, also as a freelancer. So even though this was not a planned thing, what I started realizing is using my therapy dogs in counseling sessions actually work. A lot of people, you guys have ever experienced going to a counseling session or conducting a counseling session or even observing a counseling session, you will realize that there are times, which is a lot, that people are, I mean, it's very difficult coming and opening up for a counseling session. Especially if you're coming for the first time. Most people do not even know what a counseling session is. They do not know what to expect in a counseling session. They're they're not sure what they should share, what they should not share. They're afraid whether if they share something personal that will reach somebody else. A lot of concerns are there. So there's a lot of anxiety when a person comes in for me, at least the first couple of sessions, and if they've not done counseling before. So what I used to do is for people who are comfortable with dogs, I just used to ask them whether one of my therapy dogs could be in the room with me, right? And I've seen that instant change. People who come with a lot of anxiety, as soon as they come in the door, you see them, they're a bit scared, they're a bit tense, they don't know what to say. But when there is a therapy dog, right, the dog doesn't have to do anything, just be there. If they want to play, they play. But otherwise, they don't, the dog itself doesn't go and initiate anything. It's just there. They sit next to the client, that's it. But if the client wants to, maybe brush them, walk with them, play with them, they become a part of that. So what happened in my counseling sessions is I found that the presence of a therapy dog immensely helps in terms of rapport building. The person opens up faster because they're more comfortable knowing that there's a dog around, the dog is friendly, etc. So one is in the rapport building. Now I'm going to talk about one is animal assisted therapy immensely helps when it comes to counseling sessions because people become immediately relaxed. Of course, if they're scared of dogs, then that's a different story. We have to start with desensitization first, but if they're comfortable with dogs, I've found that my animal assisted counseling sessions are very effective. Two, of course, when people go into counseling sessions, you will see that when they're narrating certain incidents in their life, or if they're uh, trying to go back into their past, recall something that happened in the past, etc. There are times when people go through difficult emotions when they're in a session. This can happen for anything. This can happen for any kind of a therapeutic session. I'm just giving you counseling as an example because I've gone through this. There are times when you break down and you're not able to continue the session. There also, I've seen that animal assisted therapy can help a lot because these dogs can of course sense emotions of people. Most of you will know that already. And how they do that is because of their sense of smell. Our body releases different pheromones when we go through different emotions, and you will see that they can identify this very fast, and when they feel that a person's feeling low, they have this tendency to come and give you company. I live with 3 dogs at home, and they're not therapy dogs. Our therapy dogs are in Bangalore. But I live with other 3 dogs at home, and whenever I'm not feeling well, all these dogs were otherwise very excited, jumping, very over friendly, etc. Whenever I'm not feeling well, or my wife is not feeling well, or my mom is not feeling well, they just come. They just come, sit with us, that's it, right? So imagine you're working with a trained dog. Now, what happens is when uh, these clients have breakdowns, overwhelming times in their sessions, the presence of these dogs actually help. Either they can take a 5 minute break with the dog, play with the dog, or they just keep playing with the dog while in the session. That also works. There's nothing stopping a person from doing that. That actually helps them to come out of the breakdown with their point of. And apart from this, another thing is I see that people actually like to come back for sessions, right? The completion rate of your sessions is much higher because they know that there's something exciting, a dog which is exciting waiting for them. Then they know that the sessions are helping them, so they'll come back and they'll complete their session. That's another advantage. So we've also done a couple of sessions at Cadagums in Bangalore. First, since it was during the pandemic, we couldn't really continue the sessions. But we did a couple of sessions and we took our therapy dogs to the de-addiction center specifically. We took them to different wards, but the addiction center was the space we spent most amount of time in. And what we found was that, we didn't have too much time for interaction, etc. But just because we had these therapy dogs with us, people wanted to interact. They were comfortable coming and talking to us. Imagine we're going, this is a hospital, right? These people generally don't like talking to strangers. But when we went as a team with a therapy dog, instantly they were opening up easily, right? So what the entire goal is, you use the therapy animals in your therapeutic process, and the therapy animals will help the other person open up, be more comfortable, etc. Thus, making your therapy process a bit easier or a bit more comfortable is what I would say. Now, next, let me tell you about who can conduct AT sessions. So I told you that a person who is conducting AT session has to be a licensed professional who has the necessary permissions to practice in that area. So like I said, when we were working with special needs children, we always made sure that there was an RCI recognized person with us. Right? We've never had sessions where it was only me. I mean, of course, in psychologists I've interacted with these children, but whenever we had animal assisted therapy sessions, we always made sure that there was an RCI recognized, somebody who was licensed to practice in that field with us, because that's mandatory. And for example, if there's a doctor who wants to use animal assisted therapy, there are cases where, especially in developed countries like the US, animal assisted therapy is a major part. At least in some hospitals, they use it with physiotherapy with children. What they do is basically children who have to do physiotherapy but are not doing it because they're feeling uncomfortable, they're not, or they could even be feeling lazy, or they could be scared to do something after a surgery, etc. They found that when you combine animal assisted, you bring in a therapy dog, and along with the physiotherapist, the therapy dog actually motivates these children to walk and do their physiotherapy session. Right? So any person who is licensed to practice in their field of physical or mental health can use animal assisted therapy. But you have to, for example, if you're a psychologist, if you're a counseling psychologist, you have to at least have completed your master's in psychology. That's the basic regulation for the basic requirement for practicing as a counseling psychologist. If you are in clinical psychology, you should have your MPhil or your PsyD. If you are a doctor, a psychiatrist, you need to have your MBBS or your, as a social worker, you should have completed your MSW, etc. So a person who wants to conduct AAT sessions, animal assisted therapy sessions. I'm not talking about animal assisted activities. Like I said in the beginning, that can be done by anyone as long as you have the handle of the therapy dog with you. Anyone can introduce such a session. But conducting animal assisted therapy sessions, a licensed therapist or a regulated professional has to be there. And you need to document what is happening. You need to have goals, and you need to make sure that you are meeting all the objectives of the treatment plan that you designed for your client. And of course, in India, we have issues with, except for a few corporates in Delhi, Mumbai. We've got partners in Delhi and Mumbai. So, except for a few cases where they got the opportunity to take the therapy dogs to big corporates like Dell. I don't remember which ones exactly, HP, etc. Uh, in India, I'm not really seen, or maybe it's just starting. We have not really seen therapy dogs or dogs in general being allowed in hospitals or special schools or mental health care centers. Of course, we went to a couple of special schools, but we could not continue, of course, because of the pandemic. But generally, in India, people think that dogs make the place dirty, with diseases, etc. But anybody who keeps a dog at home, I'm not saying in a cage outside the house, but keeps the dog as a family member inside the house, know how clean it is. Right? So, of course, there's a lot of barriers to break to get people to understand how this works. But if you look at places like the US, Canada, UK, etc., you will see that animal assisted therapy is frequently used in hospitals, both pediatric and geriatric, as well as general hospitals. They're a part of physiotherapy sessions, they're a part of counseling sessions, they're a part even of group sessions. Then they use in special schools. Of course, we experimented that in India in a couple of schools. Couldn't continue because of the pandemic. Then, of course, things didn't really work out. But we found that it was effective. Actually, there's this one experience that I share with every group that I take a session with. So the first time we went to this special school in Bangalore, there were about 7, 8 kids. This was during Corona times. First time we went, the kids were all outside. Actually, I reached earlier. I reached before. So, because whenever you're going for an animal assisted therapy session, you have to reach well in advance so that you can get the dog, take the dogs out, give them their break, give them water, prepare them for the session, etc. Uh, I reached about half an hour earlier, set up, and the dogs got used to the place. They understood the place, took them around, showed them around. All that was done. And then we had a group session with the children for about 15, 20 minutes or half an hour. And then these children had a tea break. It was called a tea and a snack break. So they went in and I thought, okay, I'll get a good 15 minutes to sit down outside with the dog because I had traveled for about 45 minutes in the morning with the dogs. Not very easy. Came here and took a 15-minute break, but then immediately after that had to have the session. And I also thought it'd be a good break for me. And the teachers there told me that they would be out in 15 minutes. So we found one corner with a lot of shade. We sat there, me, Thor, and Loki were just chilling there. Less than 10 minutes later, all the children are out. And the teachers also come out with a surprised face. What happened? I thought you gave me 15 minutes. I was just planning to take a break with the dogs, give them some time to breathe. I also get some time to breathe. The next thing these teachers say, I'll never forget that. They're like, we started the center about 2 years ago, 3 years ago. This is the first time that these children have gone in for their tea and snack break, not made a fuss at all, went, sat in their respective seats, finished their tea, finished their snacks in order and came out. They said usually it takes us 5 to 10 minutes just to get them to settle down in their places, give them the tea and coffee. Today was the first day in a long time where they just went in, sat down, finished their tea and snacks and came. That's because they wanted to play with the dogs. And then we had multiple, that day was mostly introductions, etc. And then we started doing personalized sessions for some of the children. And then the next thing is that after, I think, 2 days, the third day, the teachers are like, today the children are coming early because they know that today is the day that the therapy dog is going to come. Right? This happens not only with children, this happens in corporates, this happens in hospitals, this happens in my counseling sessions. Your attendance rate or the rate at which people keep continuing to come to you for sessions, etc., the follow-up of the sessions, etc., increase quite a bit. That's because they really like interacting. It's not like other pet dogs will come, jump at you, make you play around. You want to play, these guys will play. If you don't want to play, they can't. They just sit right next to you. That's how they play. Right. So so it's used. It can be used in special schools, hospitals, mental health care centers. In India right now, animal assisted therapy, like I said, is not that or most people who claim to do animal assisted therapy are not therapists themselves. They either have a bachelor's in psychology. So they've learned some psychology here or there, but not qualified to practice psychology. But they use their background in psychology or something or other. Very few places where I have actually seen animal assisted therapy. It's all animal assisted activity in most places. Then I think, yeah, so those are some of the basic. Now I'll also go into a brief history of animal assisted therapy. Already 10:35, we have 25 minutes left. I'll give you the last 10 to 15 minutes for a few questions. I'll also walk you through a brief history of animal assisted therapy. Animal assisted therapy started, or before that, I think we'll go into a bit of history of domestication of dogs. The archaeological evidence, which was found showing that dogs were domesticated for the first time at about 30,000 years ago, right? So we have archaeological evidence that suggests that dogs have been domesticated by humans more than 30,000 years ago. And that is about 10,000 years more than the time or from when people started domesticating horses, cattle, etc. So horses and such animals started 20,000 years ago, but dogs were first domesticated by 30,000. But of course, at that time, they were not dogs, they were wolves, right? But from the beginning of this relationship, how this relationship started was a mutually beneficial relationship, right? Or archaeological evidence suggests that wolves would get food from humans, right? And they would provide them with shelter and protection. On the other hand, the wolves would help the people of those times to hunt. Right? They would be a part of the hunting. So it's a mutual relationship. I help you for something, you help me for something. Of course, today's dogs have evolved so much, but yeah, that's how it started. And surprisingly, not a lot of people know this. But I am sure most of you people have heard of golden retrievers, one of the most common dogs, most friendly dogs, etc. But I'm not very sure how many of you know that golden retrievers are actually hunting dogs. They are not used for hunting as in going and catching animals or catching prey, but they were designed or bred to retrieve. So, for example, a hunter shoots a bird down, it's the job of the golden retriever to go get the bird. Right? The same with Labradors, right? Most of you people have heard of golden retrievers, Labradors. They're both hunting dogs, but they're retrievers, right? They don't actively hunt and catch something, but they grab whatever is, for example, something's fallen in the water, right? They'll go. That's why golden retrievers and Labradors are such good swimmers. They're water dogs. And for that matter, even your beagle, right? One of the cutest dogs. We've got beagles. Very friendly, very naughty. Beagles are also hunting dogs. You'll see that a lot of breeds, especially the old breeds, were primarily used for hunting in some sort of way. Beagles were used for their nose, amazing sniffers, right? So this relationship with wolves at that point, dogs now started 30,000 years ago. And the first AAT session, I mean, of course, at that time, it wasn't called animal assisted therapy session, but started in ancient Greece. Now, in that time, it was used as part of physiotherapy sessions, especially for people who were disabled because of war, such major incidents. At that time, it was mostly horses who were used to help with physiotherapy sessions, to help people recover. Now, the first formal research on animal-assisted therapy was done by Dr. Boris Levinson. He actually started using his own dog with his clients to see how much of an impact they had. But the first person who was widely accepted for animal assisted, even though Boris Levinson was the one who first started formal research, the first person whose findings or research was accepted regarding animal assisted therapy was none other than Sigmund Freud. And it was after Sigmund Freud started publishing works on animal-assisted therapy that the works of Dr. Boris Levinson also came up. So started with Greece. Dr. Boris Levinson did some research. Then Freud did his research, started publishing. Then that's how it started becoming. I mean, I myself did not know when I started with this entire. I did not know that Dr. Sigmund Freud was one of the first proponents of animal-assisted therapy. Right now, it's not just with one or other. It's not used only with, say, counseling or clinical. It's used. I'm so sorry. Just give me a second. Yeah. Now, animal-assisted therapy is widely used across various modalities. It's not just physiotherapy. It's not just counseling. It's used across different areas with a lot of different possibilities as well, right? So yeah, that's how animal-assisted therapy has evolved from then to now. Now, I think before winding up, I'll also talk about another aspect which a lot of people have a confusion with. People have heard of therapy dogs, but when it comes to dogs which are trained as therapy dogs, people often confuse therapy dogs with, say, service dogs, and service dogs with something called emotional support animals, right? So therapy dog is trained to work with any group of people, right? So you would never train a therapy dog, say, to work only with children or only with adults or only with females. The therapy dog is trained in such a way that they will work with anyone and everyone. They will interact with anyone and everyone. They are generally trained to be as, what do you say, as gentle as possible with any kind of person. And they're also trained to work in any kind of situation. So you can basically take a therapy dog, work with them outside in a playing ground. You can work with them inside a building. You can work with them on the side of the road. You can work with them in a park. They're basically trained to work on all different kinds of places and with all different kinds of people. Right? There's no restriction. The only restriction would be the therapy dog has to work with the handler. Right? Now, service dogs, on the other hand, are trained to work with one person. Right? These, the best example I can give you of service dogs are seeing eye dogs, right? The dogs that blind people use. These dogs are trained to work only with that one person, and they cannot work with other people. It's not common for every blind person because it's specific to that one person. Service dogs are used for blind people, deaf people, people suffering from PTSD, special needs children, etc. A whole range of people. But those dogs, people always confuse service dogs and therapy dogs. Therapy dogs can work with anyone and everyone, but they're not given specific skills. They have general skills. Of course, you can teach them to play fetch, something common, but not specific skills. Service dogs, on the other hand, are their training is tailor-made to work with one specific person. The other kind of animals that we have, which people also confuse with, are emotional support animals. Now, emotional support animals are, they're not trained. They don't have to be trained. These are, and we don't have emotional support animals. The concept of regulated emotional support animals in India, but in places like the US, if you're a psychologist or your doctor can certify that this animal is with you as an emotional support animal, you can actually take them with you wherever. But it has to be for a valid reason. For example, some people might be suffering from anxiety, depression, or they might have a physical condition. Mostly emotional support animals are for psychological conditions. They say that they need this animal to function properly. So there have been cases where people have gotten peacocks as service animals. There was this incident once when people wanted, or somebody wanted to take a peacock on a flight because it was their service animal. Huge issue. But in general, if your emotional support animal is a dog, for example, in places like US and Canada, you can take them with you on a flight, free of cost, seat next to you. Right? But of course, in India, the concept of traveling with emotional support animals is not that accepted. So I think we've got only about 15 minutes left, and I think I've covered the basics of animal assisted therapy. I'll also just take 2 minutes and give you some of the benefits and applications of animal assisted therapy. One is increased problem solving and communication skills. Now, this is mostly with special needs students who are afraid to communicate or who are afraid of being judged when working with their, say, classmates or other adults. When they work with animals, sometimes what we do is we ask the children to, give instructions to the dogs. Basically, what it does is it helps increase the problem solving skills and the communication skills of these children because they're not afraid of being judged at that point. Another thing is interacting with animals teach children how to relate to others, uh, with their friends, colleagues, or even with adults, etc. There is a huge increase or difference in their levels of depression or anxiety. So one thing that I should have mentioned right in the beginning is when you start interacting with a dog, you're playing with a dog, etc. There's something called oxytocin that's released in your body. Oxytocin is basically that uh, hormone responsible for the mother's love for the child. And you also have increased endorphins in your system. And endorphins is what you get basically when you go get a hug from a friend, right? So as soon as you start interacting with a dog, you have oxytocin and endorphin releasing in your body, and your cortisol level starts going down. That's the stress level. Right? This naturally happens when you start interacting with a dog. That is why we generally use dogs in animal assisted therapy because even if they don't do anything, even if they're just there, you just touch them and you pet them, immediately these things happen. And I'm sure you all can relate, like even if you're maybe scared of dogs, like you're not very comfortable with dogs, most of you or even your friends, you would have seen that when you see the picture of a cute puppy or a cute kitten on your phone while scrolling through Facebook, Insta, etc., you immediately have that smile on your face. That's because of the oxytocin and endorphin, which is released in your body just by seeing these pictures. Then there's a greater level of interest in sessions because of the animals present, higher focus, and uh, you're also motivated to come to sessions. When I did my counseling sessions with my therapy dogs, I found that the clients who would want to become a part of the animal assisted therapy sessions would actually come for as many sessions as possible and work through most of their issues. Where others, sometimes, I mean, it's not that they don't come back, but sometimes they postpone. I've had times when I've had 10 sessions with a client. We wrapped up the issue, success rate was good. But to complete that 10 sessions, the client took about 7, 8 months. Right? We had scheduled for 2 sessions a month, but you know, client of course had other commitments and there was a lot of procrastination, etc. And didn't happen according to the timeline that I had predicted. But on the other hand, we never had a single client who was working with animal assisted therapy who's done postponing unless very urgent things come up. So that motivation to continue the session. This happens with children also. When we were going to the special school, we would see that every child would be present on those days. Even if they were not there for the last 2 days, on that day they would be present. Right. So yeah, those are some of the benefits of animal assisted therapy, and I think I'll slowly wind up my session. It's time to take some questions. I hope I've given you some kind of an idea on what animal assisted therapy is about.
Yes, students, you can unmute yourself and ask questions, I think. Harshida, can you lead? Those who have any questions, please type in chat box or unmute yourself and speak.
Sure, ma'am. Vaishnavi, would you like to go first?
Yes. So, am I audible?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the session, sir. I had a doubt. Could you explain the therapeutic session of how it involves a therapy animal? Saying, does the client spend time with the therapy animal and then, like consecutively talk to the therapist, or does it happen simultaneously when it comes to a therapeutic session?
It happens simultaneously. So say you have a 1 hour session. the dog is there or the animal is there throughout the session when you're doing the session. See, the goal is not that they get to play with the animal. The goal is to integrate the animal into the therapy session, right? So you want them interacting with the animal. Of course, if they want a break, we call the animal over to our side. The animal sits with us, or they go to their crate. They sit in the crate. But the session, the animal part in the session happens simultaneously while doing it. Any other thing would be called animal assisted activity. It becomes animal assisted therapy when it's happening simultaneously. Their interaction with the animal and the session needs to be happening simultaneously.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, sir. Thank you for the session. I have like 3 questions to shoot out. Let me start from the first one. Like how effective this animal assisted therapy is in treating the clinical disorders, and where can we find evidences? So this is my first question.
Okay. In treating clinical disorders, of course, it's a long discussion, so I'm not going to go into complete details. But if you search for articles on animal-assisted therapy, let's say in schizophrenia or in Alzheimer's or in any of these conditions, you will see that there's a lot of research done. One specific example I can give you is for people or for seniors who are suffering from Alzheimer's. They lose their uh, connection with the regular world around. They forget people, etc. They forget people around them. They forget places. But it's been found that when you introduce a therapy dog into the mix with Alzheimer's patients, they are actually able to maintain that connection with reality during the session. Right? I'm not saying as soon as you introduce a therapy dog, they go back to them. But you can it has been evidence that when they work with a therapy animal, they're able to maintain connection with the present reality, which is generally difficult for Alzheimer's patients. So for every disorder, almost all disorders, there is scientific evidence. There's a lot of research also done. Of course, we don't have the time to discuss all of it now, but yes, I had to make this presentation for Cadabums when we had our pitch. But yeah, for various clinical disorders, animal-assisted therapy has been found to be.
Thank you, sir. So my next question is, what would be the counter indications for this therapy? Like who can
you
actually
elaborate the question?
Like who can't take this therapy?
See, who can't take this therapy is, of course, the first is people who are not comfortable with the therapy, right? Like we've had clients who come and told us that they want to be a part of this session, but they're afraid of it. So for such people, I wouldn't really say that's a counterindication, because we've had sessions where we've worked with them through a desensitization process. Who can't absolutely take these sessions are people who have physical allergic reactions to animals, right? So, for example, we once had a client who told us that he's always wanted to interact with dogs, but always had an allergic reaction to dogs. He never had dogs at home, wanted to try animal assisted therapy. Now, we tried with both the different dogs that we had. And this person was still allergic. So, of course, no. If the person is not comfortable in the first place, then we can't. Of course, there are certain breeds of dogs which are hypoallergenic, meaning they will not cause an allergic reaction. But I don't know to what extent that will work. So, except for people who got such physical reactions, anyone can use animal assisted therapy. And of course, people who are anxious or scared of dogs, we first have to work with desensitization, but we've also done desensitization with multiple clients and had wonderful results.
Okay, sir. So my final question is, like you have been mentioning in the beginning that we are using animal in assisted activities. What difference does it make in therapy and in using animals in activities?
See, in activities, when you're talking about animal assisted activity, there is no specific goal. Like when I was telling you about counseling sessions that I had with my clients, the goal was to help them out of whatever issue they were facing, right? Help them deal with issues that they're facing. When we were using animals, therapy animals in with the special needs children, the therapist who was working with them at that time, be it the speech therapist or any other special needs teacher who was working with them at that time, had specific goals. Like I said, animalist therapy has goals, right? So they had their goals, they had their plan, they had their objectives. In animal assisted activity, there's nothing of that. You come, you play with the therapy dogs, you feel better. Because when you start playing with them, when you start playing with dogs in general, you've got your oxytocin, you've got your endorphins, and you've got your cortisol level, which goes down. Now, because of that, uh, you will instantly feel better. But in animal assisted activity, there is no plan, there's no goal, there's no objective. Right? The only thing is they come, they feel better, they go. So that's the main difference between this. In animal assisted therapy, there is a goal oriented plan, there's an objective, there's a schedule, all those things, just like you have any other. But in animal assisted activity, it's just that you play with the dogs, you feel better, you go. So,
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Okay, so if there are none, we just like to. Yes, anybody wants to say something?
I think there's nobody.
Okay, if anybody is interested in giving feedback, you all can go ahead now. Any feedback to the resource person?
Can be in a Tamil or in English or in any other language, no issues.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good morning, sir. I'm Shreya and I'm here to present the feedback for the session. So the session was wonderful. You gave great insights on animal-assisted therapy and animal-assisted activities. And it was great to know how the domestication of animals and all the evolutionary history has led up to how we are using animals for therapy. And thank you for clearing our doubts in a very patient way and helping us understand how exactly this works. It was such a breath of fresh air to know about how animals can work in a therapy setting. And as somebody who is hyperallergenic to dogs, it was I had a little bit of inhibitions going into the session, but now I'm actually excited to understand how this actually works and learn more about it. This was a great opportunity. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Shreya. Anybody else?
Or Alex, regarding the research, are you continuing doing the research on animal assisted therapy?
We have one research project with sports psychologists. We're working with a few young cricket players, and also we have another one going on in the field of autism. So we have one PhD researcher from Christ who is pursuing her research with one of our therapy dogs with autism uh, residential center in Delhi. So we've got 2 projects going on right now.
Any other questions or are we closing? Harini, are you speaking something?
Okay, I think we can wind up the session
Yeah?
now.
Okay.
I don't think there's any more questions.
Yeah.
To formally wind up the session, I'd like to request Shivatmika to deliver the vote of thanks.
Yeah, we'll take a photo before that. Can you all switch on the video? Just 1 minute. Can you all switch on the video? We'll take a photo. Students, anybody is there? Can you switch on the video? Yes, thank you, Vaishnavi. Ask others to switch on the video for a minute, then we'll wind up. Yeah, thank you so much. Who's taking screenshot? Okay. Is it done? The feedback link is sent. Kindly fill it and submit. Okay. Shall we wind up, Rex? Any formal vote of thanks is there?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
have a formal vote of thanks by
Yes,
Shivatmika.
Thank you, Arshida.
Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. It gives me immense pleasure to propose the vote of thanks this momentous occasion. First and foremost, on behalf of everyone, I would like to thank our respected Managing Trustee, Mr. L. Gopalakrishnan Sir, our respected Secretary, Dr. T. Kanayan Sir, and our respected Principal, Dr. Brinda Ma'am, for their unceasing support for all the endeavors of our department. A heartfelt thanks to our esteemed chief guest, Dr. Rex Joseph, founder, Dockside Organization. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation amidst your schedule and for sharing your insights on this topic with us here today, sir. Your session gave us the opportunity to reflect and take home a lot of insights from your rich and diverse experience in this fascinating and contemporary field. A special thanks to Sparrow Counseling and Wellbeing Center for associating to organize this webinar. Thank you for the support. I would also like to extend to all our faculty for their support, which made this event possible. Thank you to all the student audience here for being participative. Thank you once again to everybody involved in making this event fruitful. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Jodhimani. He is the, doctor is the brainchild of this program who start, conversation on starting this program. Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you, Rex.
Thank you.
Are you working today, Rex? You can stop recording.
No, not today is enough.
Holiday.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Thank you for
we'll end
being
the
a
meeting
wonderful
then.
audience.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.